Hello friends, I am Hussein Lagari and today we are here to discuss Yemen issue. And today we have Mr. Jim Lockheed. He's a traveler, he's a humanitarian, and he's been working for children, women, and other marginalized groups of our society. So today we will discuss various aspects of Yemen issue and civil war of Yemen and how it is been affecting people there. So let's start. I have to ask first question to Mr. Jim that, dear Mr. Jim, kindly tell us about historical background of Yemen issue, how civil war started and how people fell in such devastating human crisis.
Yemen, and this is not mentioned so much in many articles, is in a very strategic area of the world. It's at the southwest of the Arabian Peninsula, and there's going to be a bridge someday built from Yemen to Djibouti. It's the opening to the Suez Canal from the Arabian Sea. Over history, Yemen has not played a major part, but it's been around a long time, and they have an attachment to the Queen of Sheba. And so for thousands and thousands of years, these people have been living there ever since the days that the Egyptians stole all the trees to roll the stones for the pyramids and caused the people to be nomadic. And imperialism in the area from Gibraltar to Mongolia is all desert now because it was destroyed by imperialism, and the Saudi peninsula was raped of all its trees to accomplish Egypt's monuments. The conflict in Yemen could be stopped in a minute, but the people that are involved are so mixed up. The conflict is killing children, and it's been destroying the lives of the women. There's over 1 million Yemenis that are in fear of starvation, and the United Nations and the US and Saudi, nobody's being any help. The UN's work has become futile. They're doing nothing. There is some food going into some of the areas in order that some of these NGOs can check their list off for their next budgetary, charade that they're going to pull, but it's not reaching all the people. Okay, so Yemen's been around a long time, and then Yemen was part of the Ottoman Empire at World War I, and then, of course, the Ottomans lost. Yemen was, thrown into the mix. The British took over in that area. I think I'm sure they still have connections in Aden, which you never hear about. There's also Oman there, and then Yemen, and then Saudi Arabia. And, things happened in time, and Yemen was trying to get to independence, and none of these countries were doing any help. Anyway, so it comes to today. It's changing every day. It would be not of value to try to explain every aspect of what's happened in Yemen, but this fighting has been going on now, I would say, I guess, for 10 years, talking about the Saudis bombing since 2015. Yemen is a case study for a war that has gone wrong on all fronts, okay? The Saudis have no control over nothing. The Americans are using the Saudis in a proxy war, and the Saudis are using Al-Qaeda and anything else they have connected around their border to disrupt Yemen that they feel that in the future they can just walk in there and do a cleanup. There's no consideration for the people. In the 70s and stuff, there was some very positive political movement for Yemeni independence, and it got split into two groups, North Yemen and South Yemen. And at the time, it was based on a lot of the revolutions for the third world countries, that it had some scientific background, which of course means that there were people that studied Marxism. How horrible, of course, Marxism is horrible. And anyway, so they were the leaders who got into time were trying to base things on some kind of scientific principles, but it wasn't the right time, and there were too many outside forces still disturbing the situation. So the Americans are in there through Al-Qaeda, through Saudi Arabia. They talk about and then all of a sudden at a point in Yemen, not too far in the past, in this century, is that the Houthis got mentioned. Well, the Houthis are the tribal people of that area. They are the most populous area. And if you do study a lot of it, you're going to find that the Houthis have been solidifying their position, and I would say gaining ground, which doesn't make the West very happy. And then they tie the Houthis into Iran. Now, I don't doubt that Iran's involved with the Houthis. I mean, I don't doubt that some other countries are involved in some ways, but I don't think that any of the stories from the West have much value. The West seems to be, I don't know, relying on Hollywood for too much of their stories. They're not, and so now there is a government of Yemen, and the government of Yemen is in Riyadh, is in Saudi Arabia. Well, if you have a government, they're in your country. They're not in some other country. So this is a little bit questionable. But when the Western media does their articles, they don't always explain everything so well. So Yemen is just a giant clusterfuck. The point that has to be done immediately, first of all, stop everything, is that the women and children have to be protected. That's it.
Exactly.
Okay? Without that, if the UN can't do that, then the UN is out of business. The UN is done. They have no fucking job. Quit. Okay? Because just like in every country, if you're the business that's not running your country properly, it's up to your people to throw your ass out and put somebody in there that represents the people. So the UN has failed so bad. And the US, I don't know who they care about anymore, because they don't care about their own people. They don't care about anybody in the world. And all they care about is the stockholders. And I don't care about the stockholders. I care about the children. So here Yemen is in this real mess, okay? And it's going to keep getting messier. But, but there is some, in all of the stuff that's going on, there's some positive notes. One is, I caught an article from a group that it's an NGO group, and they're all well-dressed, elite privileged people, and they have their one token person from who knows where, and the rest are all, white privileged elites. But the one woman was honest, and she said, this conversation should not be coming through me. Okay, and you never hear this from these people. These people they're like, let's keep doing it. We get our grants, shut the hell up. And she says, this conversation should be coming from the people of Yemen. So this is something that if we come out of this with anything, is that we know that we need somebody with enough power, maybe working through the UN and ignoring, the United States and Israel and Saudi Arabia, and creating an international force to go in there and feed the children and feed the women and create order. Sometimes countries are so messed up that they need some help from the outside, not weapons, not somebody to help bomb, but somebody to help put them back in order with a representative group of real citizens with
Exactly.
with with maybe more women than
And
men.
real reconciliation process.
And right, and a real legal and and the international forces are there, and they're hanging out at all of the military bases, in a nice barracks that they had sent, from their own country or whatever, and they're trying to teach the people, the soldiers from there, or to learn their dances. The soldiers want to get along because the soldiers aren't going to be fighting. You can't keep killing people for this profit. When Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, she brokered $165 billion in weapons, 45 billion worth of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia doesn't even have much of a population. Why do they need weapons? And 3/4 of the people who are in Saudi Arabia are non-citizens, so that 25% of the population is served by 75% of outsiders who come in to be the cooks, be the construction workers, be the accountants, be the computer guys. It's a very unnatural society, Saudi Arabia. And what they would need all these weapons for when there's no threat of peace to Saudi Arabia, and the country is very safe, and the people are very safe, is just one of these games that the international privileged elite of the West are doing to pad their pockets with the military industrial complexes contracts. And that game,
Exactly, exactly.
no,
And those big bosses, especially big bosses of Saudi Arabia, compel them to purchase weapons.
yeah, the United States talks about democracy, and I want to cry every time because I'm an American. I haven't seen any democracy. I can't find it. I looked under every rock. And Saudi Arabia, of course, is not a democracy in any respect. And of course, the U.S. is only after the countries that is not under their control. And the U.S., the biggest help for Yemen right now is coming through the efforts of China. And China tries to work within the international organizations and the UN, and they present things like they did with their trying to end the 29-year embargo in Cuba, and the vote in the UN went 184 to end the embargo, and only two, the United States and Israel, voting against getting aid to the children after 29 years. The Cuban children are not reaching their height potential. They're not growing as much as they can because there are restrictions based on the blockade that is affecting their health. Same as in Yemen. We can't afford any more children, and we can't afford to play these games and say all sorts of untrue words and watch all of our words and not hurt somebody's feelings. The evildoers in this are pretty clear in this case, and that's not the point. It's not the point that we're going to fight between two stupid groups while the children and the women are suffering. We have to first help the women and children, and everything else stops. Too bad. We're a big world. China can help us. If the U.S. won't help, we'll get some help from Russia. We'll get some help from Pakistan. Pakistan will be glad to help. And we'll get a group of troops in there from all over the world to shut the place down and then start organizing a new government that's based on the most workable principles for today. Okay?
Exactly.
It's not going to be capitalism. It's not going to be communism. It's going to be something that works.
Okay. Let me ask you second question. What do you think about politics of Iran and North Korea? They have been blamed for the support of Houthis. Do you think they are supporting Houthis?
I think if you were to bet your money that the articles from the Western press were true, okay, and you bet $10,000, you would lose $10,000. So we know the Western press has their script, has their orders, has their contracts, has their State Department directives, okay? So whatever's happening in Iran, nobody in the U.S. knows. They don't even know what's happening in China. How can you know what's happening in another country if you have no representation there? You're going to get it from third party of people that are upset that they left because they dropped to the knees when the Shah passed by. The people that are out of Iran because they didn't have the strength, okay, to stick it out, okay? And so, of course, they're in opposition to the Iranians because they want to be back there. They want to have their 10 servants and all this other crap. I don't know what's going on in Iran. I mean, you're the first person to say that. Who the hell knows? But I've seen some videos like Anthony Bourdain's, and I see that the people are living, a modern life and a lot of good things, and they love their children, and it's an Islamic country, so it's the people are very peaceful, and they're considerate of each other, just like in Pakistan, just like in China, and so North Korea, what can you say? Nobody in the Western world knows anything about North Korea, okay? But sometimes you do catch videos, and it doesn't matter what the dialogue is, and it doesn't matter what the person is who's right in front of the camera. But when you look in the background of the pictures of North Korea, you don't see the slums in the city like you see in South Korea. You don't see the slums in Pyongyang that you see in Washington, D.C. Okay? So anyway, the dialogue from the West about North Korea should be dismissed, okay? North Korea is not threatening anybody. This is part of the script from the West. Sure, North Korea is preparing. They remember 1949, 1950, 1951, and so do the Chinese. And this is going to come back to haunt the West, and the West has to deal with this. The West, if the West wants to commit suicide and start bombing around the world, and that's what's going to happen. The West will kill the West. It's not going to work that way. It's not going to be bombing because there's too much investment internationally around the world. And if America's crazy, they need to deal with it. They need to heal themselves. And bombing is not going to do it. If the U.S. decides to go into war, the U.S. doesn't matter what the outcome is. It's a lose-lose situation, okay? China doesn't want any war, and they say it every time, every day. And now we're seeing some special kind of hope in the world because I'm being orientated more, understanding Pakistan, and Pakistan presents a really and we talked about this before, but there's an opportunity in Pakistan, and they happen to have a really good leader right now. And I don't say that too much. Imran Khan is a is somebody that people should follow his what he's saying. I mean, this guy's saying some interesting things now. Don't go on CNN. Try to find some independent sources to explain what's going on. So there are good things going on in the world, and a lot of this is, of course, along the Belt and Road. And so we have to get this kind of attitude down to Yemen, and somebody's going to have to fix up Yemen.
Exactly. So let's move on to next question. So my next question is to you is that South Yemen was a socialist republic before disintegration of Russia and unification of Yemen. Some sources claim that Russia is still supporting Southern Transitional Council of Yemen for separation of South Yemen. What are the interests of Russia in South Yemen?
You know, surprisingly, in all the articles that I've read, I'm not hearing about too much of the Russians. They're not in the Western script. Pretty much everything that anybody I know talks about, okay? Me, you, we're getting it from the Western script. That puts us at a great disadvantage. It doesn't leave a lot of truth left in the equation.
See, I'm interrupting you. I have also heard that UAE is also been supporting Southern Yemen or Southern Yemeni Transitional Council.
Right. The UAE, the UAE is definitely part of the Saudi, U.S., Al Qaeda madness. Okay, who's going to explain these countries? I mean, even in that area, and then there's Qatar. And most people around the world, I mean, we've never been to this area. We don't really know what it's like. I've been to Riyadh. But anyway, it's hard to understand. So now with Biden as president, all of a sudden Qatar is back in the news, and the Saudis are ending their blockade of Qatar, whatever that means. The story changes every day, and it's so crazy. But these privileged elites of all these countries that don't care about the people, they are on the wrong side of history. And history's catching up with them now because history is speeding up. So it's not so easy to disguise, the positive things going on when all of a sudden, just across the way from Yemen, Kenya has a brand new railroad put in. Ethiopia has a brand new railroad put in. Sudan has a nice big dam. Uganda has and it's being done by China. And China don't care if America wants to make up stories. It pisses them off and it makes them sad. But they consider the source. There's no forced labor in Xinjiang. There's no genocide in Xinjiang because the leaders are afraid to say this. I'm hearing this. No one's saying this. Tibet is doing better than ever. Hong Kong is a bunch of spoiled brats, and China has no plans to bomb Taiwan because China loves its people. China doesn't operate like the West. China is not the West. China is not going to sacrifice a bunch of their people for war. And America better think about this. If they're, America's been working on offensive weapons now for a long time. China has been working on defensive weapons. And so America might send up a bunch of their rockets, but they might blow up in their hands. And they're
So, sir,
not, they're,
let's come back to our topic. So, I would like to ask you that we know that most of media outlets are being pushed away from Yemen to hide war crimes committed by Saudi-led coalition attacks. Why China and European powers are silent on Yemen civil war and its disasters?
this part about China being silent, what happens is China has expressed it over and over. And Xi Jinping just mentioned it in his speech. China has no plans, I don't know how many more times they can say this, to export their form of government to any country. China can, if you're a Martian country, China can work with you. If you're whatever system, socialist, capitalist, China can work. If you're a dictatorship, China's about to finish their railroad and layouts. I'm telling you, this is over the top. I mean, this is world celebration time. And so China doesn't want to export its thing. It just wants people to cooperate. And will China do business? Yeah, China wants to do business. China wants to do business a lot. And will China make some money? Yeah. And so will the country that China's working with. This has been shown too much now. This has been shown, way over. And this is where Imran Khan is being real honest, but he's not coming to the point where he's saying about the
Hello? I can't hear you.
where are we at? You're back? I can't hear you.
Sorry, there was a connectivity issue. I think so. That's why we lost the connection. I think we were on the China, that how it is doing business around the world.
How it gained what?
You are telling me that how it is doing business around the world.
You know, one of the things that's happening now is that in reality, if you go to China and you look and you observe, and then you go to America and you look and you observe, and in China you see 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, in America you see none. China is 20 years ahead of the US. It's not going to erase what China has done by hiding all of the amazing miracles being built in China.
So
At some point it's got to be admitted.
I think that is an important thing. I think we can discuss all these details in a session separately designed for the China. And I know you are very like excited to tell all the stories about China, and
Well, not all of them. Not all of them.
you love to talk about it. So just last question is that how Yemen issue can be resolved peacefully.
A group of nations is going to have to get some testosterone, okay? And they're going to have to stand in the UN, and they're going to have to smash their hand down on the table and saying, we're going to have a vote right now, and we're going to do it. And if, because we have to feed the children, and they're going to start making stuff. And the countries that don't want to go along with them, they're going to have to make it clear, what they want to do. And they need to use the rules as best they can. They need to put this thing to a stop as soon as possible. and those who don't want, the U.S. wants to tell everybody what they need to do, but the U.S., is not helping anybody. They're not helping anybody. It's like, I mean, are the movies enough? Of Rambo saving the world. Is that all we need? We just need a movie that America saved the world. No, we need hard work. And so we're seeing hard work around the world. We know where this hard work is leading. There's a movement going on in the world right now that is always mentioned by people as unstoppable. If America wants to stop China, they have to get
this all can happen on the basis of collective consent, because you can't direct anybody or any group on the basis of your own interest, like Saudis or Americans are trying to do.
Right. These groups are playing with it. The NGO groups are making money off it. They don't want to lose their jobs, so they just push their paperwork through. And there's some of us that work on the ground. That drop down on a knee and give a child a hug when they're really small. And then there's some that are wearing suits and ties. They come from great families and they're working out of offices and they have good PR firms. But that's a different story. We need some real work. We need enough countries to have the balls to stand in the UN and say, this is what we're going to do. Okay. And if America and Israel and whatever, if you want to fight with us, we're going to be ready to fight, but we're not there to fight. We're there to protect the children, and we're there to get Yemen back into an organized country where the people are the consideration and not the stockholders.
Great. Thank you very much for your precious time. And viewers, it was our first conversation over Yemen issue, and we'll be talking on this issue in our next conversation. I would like to thank Mr. Jim once again for his precious time and his insight and presenting his insight over all this issue. Thank you, sir. And I hope.
Come on, people. Let's gain our good conscience back. Okay. Let's take the things we know that are right.
Exactly.
And let's apply them to the world. Let's take care of the children.